Hello and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 4 of my Halloween doll series, and in this painting we're going to continue working on some more of the details and just trying to get the shape and the facial features of the doll correct. The app that we're going to be using is Infinite Painter for Android. And if you want to follow along traditionally, then check out part 1 in this series, where I have a list of all the paint and things, canvases and brushes that I use when I'm painting traditionally. So here we're trying to work more on her hair. And I just want to add some more pockets of dark and light strands into her hair. I'm trying to smooth it out a little bit because when you do hair, you see individual strands maybe on the edges and a little bit around their face, but for the most part, you have to show the highlights, and the highlights give a illusion of different hair strands. So you want pockets of dark and light in your hair. So I'm trying to use different colors of brown. If you're following along traditionally, you use burnt umber and yellow ochre. And then here I'm working on her fangs. I want her fangs to have a little bit more definition to them, and also her mouth, working on it to give it more of a bow shape. And then I wanted to work a little bit more on her eyes and show her eyelashes. As I said before, these are rooted eyelashes, and they're actually they look like real eyelashes. They're not just drawn on. So I wanted to go ahead and show the eyelashes. And just kind of work on the shape of the upper eyelid here and try to get that correct. And also her hair, some of her hair has come over on the other eye, so it's sort of the eyelashes are behind the hair on the eye that's on the left side. So I'm just kind of working on the color above the eyelids and the eyebrows. The eyebrows are painted on real light, so I've kept them as just a really light brown. And I'm just kind of working on the bandana that she has. And I don't know that the bandana came with the costume. It might have. They have several different costumes at Babeside that you can buy. And the bandana might have, but if it didn't, I got it off of Temu as one of the little pet bandanas that they have. But I think it might have come with a costume. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm showing some dark and light on the bandana to show the wrinkles where it ties around her neck. And so you can use a darker red, use burnt sienna mix it with some of the cadmium red light or the crimson. And then for the highlight, add some white acrylic gesso if you're following along traditionally. And then the bandana has a little what they call a paisley pattern on it, and so I'm trying to show that with some white. And you could use your script brush if you're following along traditionally with some white acrylic gesso, and just try to make indications of that pattern that's on those bandanas. And you can kind of smudge it in and not make it look as sharp. You kind of want it to lay down on the pattern, make it look like it's in the wrinkles and the folds there. And you can use your blend brush in Infinite Painter, and you can use a paper towel or something if you're following along traditionally. And so here I'm trying to change her face just a little bit. I'm using the move tool, the lasso tool to move her face just a little bit over. I just wanted it to be a little bit different, a little bit further down, and show her forehead a little bit more. And so I went ahead and did that, and I'm trying to blur out where it shows the background underneath right there. And you have to take a really small brush for the blending brush. And the nice thing about the Infinite Painter blending brushes is that you can set the blending brush on any of the brushes that are listed in there. So it'll give you the texture of, say, a watercolor, the texture of the old oil, or a filbert, or a pencil, just whatever you want to do there. So I had to kind of work on the eyebrows and a little bit on the skin between the eyebrow and the eyelids. And then here I'm working a little bit on the hair, trying to put some highlights there. I moved the sketch layer up again over the top of the paint layer so that I could make sure that I was keeping things in proportion there. And again, I said in one of the previous parts, you can use your original sketch that you put on tracing paper and just put it over your painting. And that's why I use acrylic, because you can't do that if you're using oil. But if you're using acrylic, it should be dry, and you can just put it over your painting and make sure that you've got everything in proportion. So here I'm kind of trying to get some highlights going in the hair and kind of on her face, on her nose a little bit, trying to get some of the light there and make it, give it a three-dimensional look. That's what we're trying to do, is try to get a three-dimensional look and not have your painting look flat. So I'm adding a light brown color. You can probably take burnt umber and maybe some ultramarine blue if you're following along traditionally, and add white acrylic gesso. And then here I'm using some of the brushes. There's a thin hair brush that's in Infinite Painter, and there's also a dry brush, and I'm using that to feather out the look of the hair when I blend it in Infinite Painter. And if you're following along traditionally, you would take one of your flat brushes, maybe your number 4 flat, and just put a very thin amount of paint on it and let the bristles spread out and give you kind of that hair texture that you get as you would paint it on. And so that's what I'm trying to get there, is to mimic the look. We're not drawing each individual hair, but we're trying to mimic the look of individual hairs. And that gives it the illusion that you've got individual hair sticking out or whatever. And that's why I say that painters are kind of magicians, because you work with illusion. You give the illusion that there's more detail there than there actually is. And that's one of the secrets of painting. And so I'm just kind of working a little bit on the arm. I'm trying to get, the arm is a foreshortened arm. So you're going to have to kind of work with the look, trying to get the foreshortened look. And what you do there is you add a lot of some shadows and a lot of curved strokes on the arm so that it gives the look of a round object there, a round arm, and that also is sort of an illusion that you're trying to get there. And so I'm using some of the shadow color, some darker brown for the shadows, and some of the lighter colors for the highlight on the arm there, just trying to get, and using round strokes. And you could probably use your number 3 round brush. And then here I was trying to add a little bit of shadow to the doll's nose, but I made a stroke accidentally, and so I had to come back later and blur that out. If you're doing that traditionally, you make a stroke on your canvas. If you've got acrylic, you can just wipe it off right quick. And then here I'm working on the hat, trying to get the shape of her brim, and also the little hair bands that I put as decorations, little black and orange roses on the hat, and trying to get the right shape for them. And also the side of her cowboy hat and the brim. I was trying to get the look of that. And I wanted, again, it to look different from the hair color, so I was trying to make it a darker brown. And you can use either burnt sienna or burnt umber, and just make sure that the hair is a different, lighter color. And so I wanted to add some highlights on the side of the hat. And her cowboy hat is really kind of floppy, so it has kind of an odd little shape on the side because the brim snaps on top of the crown to kind of, because it's a really floppy cowboy hat, and so the brim snaps onto the crown to make it have that cowboy hat look. And so I went ahead and added the highlights on the side to show that that's the side of her hat, and also along the top of the crown and on the top of the brim. And you would just take your paint mixture, if you're following along traditionally, and add white acrylic gesso, and that would give you the highlight. And for this, just add a little bit of a, if you're using Infinite Painter, just go with a little bit lighter brown color to get the highlight there. And so that's what I was trying to do, and then work on the black rose and try to give it a rose shape there, and the orange rose as well, because we want those to be the Halloween colors. We want black and orange for the Halloween colors. So, and I was working on the little band that goes around the crown of the hat, and just trying to get the shape of the hat again, and going back and forth, trying to get the right kind of shape, and on the side of the hat and on the back of it, and just working back and forth, trying to get that shape correct. And that's what you have to do when you're doing these detailed type paintings, is just go back and forth and add details and smooth them in and add some more. And then here I'm working on the orange rose, and I've added a lighter orange color. You can use cadmium orange with white acrylic gesso, and use your script brush if you're following along traditionally, and then kind of blur in the lines that you've drawn. You want it to be the folds, to try to show the folds or the petals of the rose. And then here I'm using a gray color on the black rose to try to get show the folds and the petals of the rose. It's kind of a silk-like material that they're made out of, and so you want to kind of try to show that with the highlights on it. So this is the end of part 4 in my Halloween doll series. In part 5, we're going to keep on doing the details and keep on adding the details. So if you want to see that, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.